Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in, I'm sure, what will promise to be a very insightful session with Mr. Cooper. I would also like to welcome and thank Mr. Cooper for his time today. Mr. Cooper, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for joining.
I'm sure we'll all learn a great deal from him during this session, much in the same way as I had learned when we had worked with Heidelberg last year during their engagement survey initiative. So moving on and getting started, today's initiative is broadly divided into three sections, and as they are fairly self-explanatory, we will begin part one by really talking about how do you create a convincing argument internally in your organization on an employee engagement survey as a strategic initiative. Once having created that argument, the next part will focus on how do you create the right initiative with all the right elements to ensure that your engagement survey program is successful and covers all the elements that you and the senior leadership team would be interested in. And third, which is equally and most important, how do you ensure that you conclude your survey initiative with the right action plans and sustain the momentum that you have generated by getting the voice of your employees to ensure that business performance further ramps up from what it is today. Now, before we really get started and try to answer why employee engagement survey is a strategic initiative, maybe it's worth first understanding just how many initiatives are there in an organization which are deemed to be strategic. And there's obviously factual answers which we have from research, but also emotional answers. And I'm sure all of us in today's session will agree that each and every one of our organization has indeed a lot of strategic initiatives. So if you think about it, strategic initiatives nowadays are a lot like a fancy dress competition where each department tries to outdo each other and grab the attention of the judge, which in this case is usually the managing director or the CEO. And in doing so, however, not all strategic initiatives are fancy. And so what we want to first do is really go back to the basics and ensure that there are some fundamental questions that we are able to address that allows us to craft a strategic initiative for our employee engagement survey. And so Mr. Cooper and I actually took the time to list down 5 very clear points on what constitutes a strategic initiative. And let me quickly take you through them. So first off, the initiative has to ensure it is comprised of high priority action items that will bridge the gap between your current performance and future visions. And so in this case, it's also very important to, as clearly as possible, articulate what is the current performance and what exactly does the future look like that you would aspire to achieve. Point number 2 talks about not just achieving incremental breakthrough, but having significant breakthrough or improvements as a result of the program or initiative that you're wanting to drive. And in doing that, point 3 very clearly outlines that it also needs to be a departure from business as usual. And Mr. Cooper will talk about this in his experience of how in HeidelbergCement, the employee engagement survey was a departure from business as usual and how that helped not only him, but the organization propel itself forward. Now, like any strategic initiative, it's also important to have a very clear and definitive start and end date. So what would you like to achieve when you start, and what is it that you'd like to achieve by the time you conclude? And moreover, how do you ensure that things are carried forward from that point of view? Last but also very important, any strategic initiative should have a clearly articulated investment. And here we are also very clearly calling out investment not just of money, but probably more importantly of time and people. So Mr. Cooper, first question for you. What from your point of view made employee engagement survey a high priority for HeidelbergCement?
Kartik, as an organization, the management has many options, in terms of whether it be strategy or tactical. One has to be very clear about it, what the organization needs. When we talk about what the organization needs, that means, you have priority lists. Mm-hmm. You can decide which priorities you would want to put them on the higher ones and the lower priorities. Now, if I was to talk about this particular aspect of our business, which is, the people. When we talk about people, we know that unless the people are engaged, you can't achieve much. It is said that you can have everything. You require money, machinery, and people. Ultimately, you've got to get the people engaged. I'll start from here with an example. Say, suppose when you want to decide a priority of this, you think about a matter like if you are having a car and you are putting in 10 liters of fuel and it is supposed to go about 100 kilometers and it is just going, say, suppose 50 kilometers. What does it mean? It means that you are not getting optimum value for the money you are using, you are spending, or you are investing. Because every employee is a cost to the company, and if this cost you can't translate into the results, then you are not using the proper resource in the proper manner, optimizing the resource. Now, there are many of you would have seen, coming to the second example, when I am saying that input to output ratio you have to see. Now, when you are seeing many people are buying electrical equipments, nowadays people are talking about 5-star equipment, 4-star ratings are there. Many of you are conversant with this. What does the 5-star means? 5-star means the input of power what you are using, you are getting the return equal to the 5 units of power which is consumed. Maybe on a 3-star rating equipment, you are putting more power in it and you are getting the value which is not adequate.
Yep.
So your leverage is very high. Now the question comes here is, would you like to keep investing or paying your people the amount what you are paying today and get less in return?
Right.
And if the answer for some people it may be yes, for some people it may be no. And when we say that if the answer is going to be no, then what is it you are going to do first?
Right.
A car you can drive, okay, in lower gears, okay, and cover up a mileage which is lesser and consume more fuel.
Very true.
So when you are doing the gearing there, means you are engaging the right gears. So you got to engage the right people, and your people, the only difference between engaging mechanically and human beings, the difference is you will use force to engage your cars into a certain gearing. And when it comes to employees, the engagement comes from within. And this within force has to come from the employees on their own.
Right.
And you are just a facilitator to ensure that this gearing happens to the optimum level. So for us, when we saw this, when I was looking at this, I said, the first thing is, unless people are engaged properly or from within, you will not get the results which you are looking for. And that's how, we said, let us understand the organization pulse. And that is why we went in for this employee satisfaction or engagement survey to understand where we stand today.
Great. I think I personally really liked the example you made, and I think there were quite a few important points in what you're saying. One is to say, how do you distill between a tactical and a strategic point, and that really comes to understanding which out of your list of focus action plans are more strategic, give you more value, and are more helping you optimize your result. And I think the other analogy that you made of how you really engage, let's say, mechanical machinery or automated systems versus how you engage human beings and employees, there's a fundamental difference, and that is within you can exert force which is external, and in the other the force is more internal. And I think that's a great takeaway for us to really try to understand when we make a convincing argument internally, how does that proceed? So the next subsequent question that comes to mind, Mr. Cooper, is from your point of view, what were those significant breakthrough results that you believed through this facilitation of a survey you were able to achieve?
Kartik, the breakthroughs, as I said, first of all, what the idea was to understand the pulse of the organization and how engaged the people are. Unless you diagnose the problem, okay, you can't find a solution. And this whole exercise was a diagnosis of areas which need improvement. Okay, I don't say that they are the shortcomings, but I would say they are the areas of improvement which we were looking for. And when the survey results came in, we were quite happy to see that we had certain assumptions that our people are not satisfied or happy, but to our surprise we found that it was a little better than what I expected.
Right.
So over a period of time, when these results came in, we started working on them, and I'll explain to you as we move forward how we went, what are the things which we have done to improve on it or attend to it, because any employee satisfaction survey or employee engagement survey will never give you 100% the truthful picture.
Right.
Still there will be undercurrents in the organization where people are very guarded, and in the Indian environment, whenever you ask a question to anybody, the first fear is what will follow through. Will I get will I be put under pressure, or will I be known, my identity will be known. So there are many things, and as Indians we try to give an ranking also somewhere in between. So you have to be very careful understanding the results. You may not, unless you try to probe into it further, you will not get the true picture. So a result comes in, but at a point of time, one has to also understand what people are writing and tick marking. Is it what they are wanting to say, or is it something they are saying, or they are trying to cover up for giving you a bitter pill with a sweeter coat?
Absolutely. I think, Mr. Cooper, you've made a couple of startling revelations here, and I think our colleagues would have probably picked up on this as well. What I hear you say is that while some of the results are more of an ongoing exercise, which will probably be covered subsequently, not just in the presentation, but also in your journey, what I really picked up from what you're saying is that the breakthrough that you were able to articulate is this initiative was actually going to help you diagnose the problem, which is a very different perspective, isn't it? Because most of the times we are so hell-bent, and naturally so, of creating initiatives where we are trying to say this is the outcome or the solution that we are going to be able to create. I think you're making a very bold and also a very authentic statement by saying that this initiative was, rather than trying to address and create a solution, identify and articulate the problem more clearly.
That's right.
Very interesting. And in a way that also answers question number 3, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this as well, Mr. Cooper. For most organizations, right, like you rightly said, there are two sides to the coin. There's the customer, and then there's the people. And business as usual demands from customers we generate more profit, extract higher market share, get more revenue, right? And I think, like you rightly said, when we look at our talent and our workforce, the objective there translates to better innovation, higher productivity, higher retention. So what do you think could be non-business as usual, in addition to what you had already mentioned?
Kartik, when we talk business as usual, business finally translates into 3 things: people, products, and profits.
Right.
Unless you have the right people, the other 2 won't make a difference to you. To translate anything, you require human beings and people. If you have the right people in your team, then your customers, you have your profits, you have good products, you have good satisfied customers, because as I said, the people who work from within are the ones who travel the extra mile.
Yes.
They ensure that the customers are not happy, they ensure that the customers are delighted. If you have a team which is into research, and if the people are motivated, their people are engaged, your time for innovation will get shortened. Means when you are shortening the innovation time, that means you are ahead of the innovation curve in the market. So you are bringing in products faster. You are bringing the products at much cheaper price.
Yes.
Idea is that you get better productivity when your people are engaged. everything boils down to that how better you are than your nearest best competitor. And people give you the cutting edge when it comes to taking the market, taking the production lines, anything. When it comes to becoming competitive, it is people who matter. And I think whether the business runs or not, but if your people are not happy, your graph is going to be slow and steadily on the southwards. And if your people are engaged, your graph, whatever you do, small initiatives, graph will always either it can be flat or it can be moving northwards.
Sure.
But it cannot be going southwards. That is for sure.
Right. And so if I understood that correctly, what you're saying is that in a business as usual context, people day by day come to work. It's a subsistence that we all yearn for. But what I understand as a departure from business as usual is beyond just subsistence. How are you creating that discretionary effort, which you rightly articulated as going the extra mile? And how is that then translating into results, which are anyway part of any organization's strategic initiative or plan?
So one can say that I can focus right now. Let me focus on my day-to-day bread and butter, and I can attend to employee satisfaction or engagement surveys later on.
Yes.
Choice is yours. You will burn more fuel, get less mileage.
Absolutely. So there are two paths for all of us colleagues, and I suppose it's the decision of us to figure out whether it's bread and butter or engagement which is sustaining and subsisting both the organization as well as our lives in general. So interesting to transition into the next part then, Mr. Cooper, which is, what you're saying in a sense has no definitive timeline, right? There's no time for me as a person, as an employee, to be engaged or disengaged. It has to be something that I do continuously. And often those questions internally are going to be asked of me, right? That do I do this as business as usual, or do I do this being extra engaged, going the extra mile? So keeping that viewpoint and that end goal in mind, how do organizations from a business standpoint create a definitive start and end date for this initiative in general?
See, as I said, it's a question of when you're talking about a definitive date or start, it becomes ultimately you are interested in the end result of the survey, what comes out. It again depends on how fast you would like to do it. I don't think this is a very critical parameter for me. I would say that if a survey has to start, it should complete within 25 days, maximum 25-30 days if a time horizon is given. Take a decision with it. It does not take you too long to decide on the questions. Understand your organization, you understand the organization needs. Maybe 30 days time frame a window you should look at completing this survey, because you give it more time, then also it is not so good. People then try to wander here and there. People don't take the things seriously. So I would put a time frame. If this is what your question is, that it is a time frame, I would say at best 30 days from beginning to end.
Right. Now, while I know that's a factual answer and one which is pretty consistent across most organizations, I do know this as well, Mr. Cooper, that Heidelberg as a culture is very open, and there are a lot of healthy debates internally within the senior leadership team in trying to get the best out of every solution that you do. A question comes to my mind in terms of, here you have a little bit of a paradox, right? You have 30 days within which you're saying the initiative would start and conclude, but what would you have answered when your colleagues also say at the same time, how are we sustaining this initiative from a timeline point of view? What was your thought process from that perspective?
See, it's a question, Kartik, it's a question of everybody will have different views on this. But ultimately, what is it you want? Any initiative which is going to be stretched over a period of time too long.
Yes. Okay.
I don't think it loses steam. Okay. I would go ahead to say that why can't it be done in 15 days? anything 15 days, if you can complete instead of 30 days in 15 days of margins you have gained. You are ahead of curve.
Sure.
So I think the faster the better.
Okay. So in one sense,
and there are reasons for it. As we go forward, I'll explain to you when you will ask certain questions on this, that how did you engage, how did you engage your team, senior team on this.
Yes.
We'll come to that at that point of time.
Absolutely right. I think a clear takeaway from this, colleagues, is that there needs to be, of course, a clear start and end date, but what that helps us generate, as we all heard Mr. Cooper, is a very strong momentum that will then propel us to taking the organization towards new horizons, new directions. And that could mean multiple things: more customer focus, higher productivity, etc., etc. Interesting, Mr. Cooper. So here's a question which I think everybody is probably already thinking about, and in a lot of cases, I know for any strategic initiative, this is usually question number one, right, which is how do you justify the investment? And in investment scenario, let's understand it both from not just the financial investment that you may have made, but also how do you justify the investment of the time that you and the senior leadership team took, the HR team took, and the workforce will take in general.
Kartik, you have taken the words from my mouth. The thing is, it is not so much of a issue about financial investment in this. It's a question of time investment. Time is the major factor which calls for, and this is the factor which we are always falling short of.
Yeah.
Money, you can generate. It's not too big an investment, but when it comes to telling senior executives or people around in the organization that you will have to spare so much of time to get it done, and you have to invest so much of time, this is where the shyness comes in.
Yeah.
And people are really stressed on their time. In today's times, companies have given us mobiles and taken away 24 hours of our time.
I couldn't agree more.
In a era of today's time, when time is of in extreme shortage, you have to think about how do you take out time for these type of initiatives. Maximum of the times, people will procrastinate on this particular part, saying that I don't have the time and let's postpone it.
Yes.
Nobody will say that I don't have the money to do an ESS.
That's right.
So, as I said, the problem is, if we are going to procrastinate this whole thing, are we trying to say that I'm okay living with this problem? I'm okay if my people are not geared, if I'm okay if my people are partly engaged. If the answer is there is yes, then you can always put this employee this engagement survey on the back burner.
Yeah.
But if you are not okay with it and you are saying no, I want from today, I want my people to deliver the value for money what they are getting. I think then all sort of investment, you just forget about it. Get in the time on the table. Just get on to doing this particular survey. It is very clear that do you want to improve today or do you want to do it a year later? Okay, and if you are ready to live with this problem for a year, might as well do it next year. Maybe do it after 3 years. Nobody is putting you pressure on you. You have got a profit balance sheet to deliver.
Absolutely right.
You can do it, but you are going to deliver something which is not to your expectations. You are going to deliver something which people will deliver half-heartedly, not to their full potential, and here the organization stands to lose. So the investment of money, as I said, is not too big an issue, but yes, the senior management team in the company has to recognize that we got to get optimum output of our people, and for that you must do this survey. It is a question of till and unless and until you engage your people into this, you will not get the desired results.
Right. So as a follow-up, what you're saying is that we are as a species, we're a species of now. what is there in front of us today. And unfortunately or fortunately, there are multiple things that are there, of which engagement surveys may just be one of them. And really, colleagues, the best way to answer this question is to ask ourselves the hard question that are we okay to wait for addressing this problem now, or are we okay addressing it 3 years later? And that really will dictate how you can figure out when is the right time to start and justify the investment. So we've got, Mr. Cooper, some very good outputs just to close part one on, how do you look at these 5 item agendas to ensure that engagement survey is a strategic initiative. To move forward, now we'll talk a little bit about having, let's say, created that convincing argument and got the green signal. What are the things that we need to keep in mind in creating a very effective engagement survey program? So what are the different dimensions that both you, the HR team, as well as the senior leadership had to really distill and understand in order to make sure all ends were covered? And colleagues, what again Mr. Cooper has helped us understand over here is articulate 5 very broad but authentic points. Let me read them out for you. The first is really how critical communication is. I think here a good example follows. You think of yourself as a pilot on a long plane going over the Indian Ocean and there's turbulence. The more you communicate with your passengers, the more comfortable they'll be. And I think nothing rings more true when it comes to employee engagement as well. There is never anything like over-communication. The more of this you do, the better it is, and I think Mr. Cooper and team will share some terrific insights of how they achieved this particular stated objective. Earlier on, you would have seen Mr. Cooper also talk about, the questions that you need to ask in the survey. And here again, this becomes even more pronounced, especially if the objective you're wanting to achieve from the survey is diagnosing the right problem. And that will only happen if you ask the right questions. The third is also knowing whom and how and when to involve. And Mr. Cooper will talk about what was the role of the senior leadership team, how HR, of course, played a very prominent and facilitative role. That comes down to then ensuring that you get as many responses as possible from the workforce. And I know, Mr. Cooper, this is a burning issue which across the industry people face. And it's a fear, right? Because, if I was to run a survey internally, one thing that backfires in my mind constantly is, what if I don't get the right results? At the end of the day, it makes me look bad. And that's an important point, and I know you've thought through this many times, and we'll be happy to get your inputs. And colleague, last point, I think, which is super critical, and Mr. Cooper will share some very interesting insights here, is before you even see the results, try to imagine and preempt the results. So Mr. Cooper, sort of jumping straight into this, can you talk a little bit about how you had initiated communication for this survey?
Kartik, everybody, I need not stress on the point that, communication holds the key to success.
Yep.
Effective communication opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so effectiveness is very important in a communication. How effective you are in your communication. At many a times we fail because we do not communicate the right thing to the right people and at the right time. I believe that if you convey properly, you communicate properly to your people, you get a lot of buy-in which comes in. We first of all, when we started thought about this, the first point was that we should brand this survey, and we created a small poster for this, which was applied across the company. We sent a very good message to the people stating that this survey is purely anonymous.
Yep.
So don't be fair, open about it, and there will be no backlash of this.
Yep.
That is very important part to convey, and the people should believe in what you are saying. Okay, so you have to keep emphasizing that point from time to time in your various communications. When you send the first time communication, you will get a response of say something like 30% of the people would go onto your web and start answering the questions and things like that.
Yes.
it takes time, because there are people again, those people also think, yes, what is this survey? Again, this survey has come, what is it going to happen out of this? In the past also surveys have happened, nothing has come out of it. So this also puts a big responsibility on the shoulders of the management, that if you are doing it, do it properly and do it in a complete manner. When we thought about doing this communication, we did make a point, and the point was very clear that when we wanted to tell our people that your opinion matters, and we are here and we are listening.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people in the initial 1 or 2 phases of first or 1 or 2 mails, they will say, okay, let me do it, the management is serious. There will be some disbelievers. Over a period of frequent communication, you have to bring these disbelievers into the belief mode.
Sure.
And we might have sent, my HR team would have sent at least 10 mailers in continuous, one after the other within the time frame, urging the people to and explaining to them that we are really wanting you to answer, wanting you to express your feelings, we are listening, and we are serious about it, and your opinion does matter.
Right.
And this is what we were trying to convey all through our communications. We always said that, by doing so many communications and saying it so many times, we were able to build in the trust, which might have been, eluding in with some of the people.
Very true.
So we could get most of the people on board, and finally people answered and completed the survey. So for us it was a good point. We could convey many of our internal thoughts also to the people while this survey was going on. And we could, earn their respect probably, that the management is sincere about it. It is wanting to do something for the people, and people felt involved. And when we went forward with it, after the results came in, we did a lot of work on it, which I'll discuss later on.
One thing that just struck me while you were talking, Mr. Cooper, we're here in Cyber City, and as part of safety norms, a lot of times in the building there are fire drills, right? And I think what I hear you say is the feeling that we all have when there's a fire drill versus when there's an actual fire, there's a very big difference, right? Our feelings are much more authentic, of course, when there's a fire drill. I think what you're saying is that the communication of the survey really helped you to lend authenticity to your workforce, to say this is quote unquote not just another survey that you can roll your eyes and fill in. It's really, like you rightly branded it also, it's about your voice. And I think another interesting point, just picking on the words that you've used, because I think this is a very natural phenomenon and everybody should know about this, that when you run any initiative, including an engagement survey, you're bound to come across naysayers and people who disbelieve you, either at the senior leadership team and all the way to the front line. So you've got to, I think as Mr. Cooper said, tackle science with science. And I think the science over here that I see very strongly in front of me, Mr. Cooper, is the branding you gave the survey, which is my voice. Not even your voice, but my voice. So it's empowering people from a messaging point of view to really say this company is all about what you feel, and we'd like to know what that is. Fantastic. Dovetailing to the next point, and I think we've already got colleagues asking us this as we speak, Mr. Cooper. When you think of surveys or when you even think of training programs, I think it's a very natural tendency to include, as many things as you feel are required for us to achieve from the workforce. And the challenge with surveys, of course, is you need to ensure that it's engaging in the experience itself, and yet you're asking the right questions, but also the relevant ones. And I'm sure there would have been a lot of tug of war internally in terms of what questions to answer. So can you help us figure that out?
Kartik, as a group, we, the global parent, which is we are a German-based company, Heidelberg, and as a group, we have this employee engagement surveys done every alternate years at the global level, we get, but there the number of people who participate on a country from each country are few. Maybe 50 to 60 people participate, get the the form from the link from there and participate. Whereas we in this country are a huge population of employees here, and we don't. Everybody is not able to participate in that.
Sure.
When we were thinking about this engagement survey, we said our base will be bigger. We want to involve more number of people. We want to understand the climate within the country of our people. We wanted the pulse of our people within India. So we chose almost something like 740 or 750 people. We chose the questions we picked up. Some of the questions we picked up from the global survey, and part of them we know that considering that what type of a socio-economic environment we come from, and what are the questions which would be more relevant to India. We knocked off, we added some of the questions which were more considering our social orientation, and considering what type of answers. As I said, many people, if you give them answer questions, they will mark somewhere in between, and you don't know which one should I take, which is the right side or the left side.
Very true.
And so you have to be careful while framing the questions that the answers you will get are at least loaded to one side. They are not neutral.
Correct.
So the questions have to be asked. So when we decided on those questions, these points were taken into consideration. Plus, we had our internal feelings that probably we had some hunches or intuitions that maybe we are not doing these things properly. We are doing these things properly. So can we bring them out in forms of questions? And these questions were framed according to that, so that we, at least those hunches what we have, or those feelings what we have, to get them validated.
Right.
Whether we believe what we are thinking is correct or not.
Right.
So to support that, to get them ratified, to get them whether to get them what should have validated, we brought on those type of questions also.
Okay.
So this is how the questionnaire was designed, and I think people responded either side of it. It was not too much of a neutral.
Right, and we'll get to neutrality subsequently, because that inevitably becomes eventuality in the survey initiatives that companies do. But as a follow-up to what you're saying, Mr. Cooper, can you also help me and our colleagues understand how did the design, right, or what part of the design helped you to make the survey more about engagement and not only about satisfaction?
Ultimately, only a satisfied person is engaged person, I would say. It's also about, there were certain questions where we were wanting, there were certain direct questions also, which on any engagement survey has it. And they are those questions that would you recommend anybody in the organization? Okay, would you like to do something unique for the company? Okay, you ask so many of these questions which are very, very direct. I would say that some of the questions people will answer on the affirmative only.
Yes.
You will not hear many people answering on the negative unless he is a very disgruntled or disengaged employee or a dissatisfied employee. So you have to read between the lines also, even after the questions you put in, or whether it is of satisfaction leading to or an engagement.
Yes.
You got to read between the lines. And what is the general trend within the organization? You just can't pick up a point and you can't take it to one person or two persons or a group or a section of a people. You got to understand which side the organization is tilting.
Right. For
each question you have to think later on also once the result comes in, and probably try to from a critical viewpoint also you should try to analyze and try to give it a little negative point also to it, even when you are scoring high. So from the criticality point, you have to, once you start looking at the questions and answers, probably you will drive more mileage out of it.
What I think as an organization and as a person can really relate to Heidelberg is that one, of course, it's a very large organization. It's headquartered in Germany. It has a very strong workforce across multiple locations. And yet in India, it's a small, nimble organization, relatively speaking, with less than 1,000 employees. So I think everybody can relate to, Mr. Cooper, the point that you're making of, one, having a survey done globally and what the design was there, and how you took courage to also distill that same design and make it more relevant to the Indian context. I think that's one point
right.
I understood. The second thing I also heard you say is that as leaders, you all have, or rather we all have hunches of what the organization is and where it's going. The design helped you to validate that based on the response from your workforce.
Yeah.
And the third thing that I take away from this conversation is that while satisfaction is a very key component of engagement, you also looked at retention, and you got a more holistic perspective to say, are people satisfied? Sure. Are they advocating for the company? Yes. But let's also say, are they retained over here, and are they engaged or are they actively engaged from a retention point of view?
Right.
So dovetailing to, I think, what you were earlier talking about also, how, from a creation point of view, did you align with not just HR, but more importantly with the other business units that were there as well?
Kartik, in any survey, you earlier mentioned that the biggest fear is among people is what if the results are not good?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the biggest fear. Another reason for people not going in for engagement surveys. Mm-hmm. Because if you are knowing that the results are going to be bad, this is the fear which haunts most of the senior management.
Right.
And people don't want to take the bull by the horns. The question becomes here is, how long can you evade reality?
Right.
Okay. It's not, I always say that, if you want to treat a patient, you've got to have a diagnosis.
Yep.
Only then can you make a right prescription. And if you are going to just shun the thing or push it under the carpet, your problems today, they will one fine morning, they are not going to disappear.
Yep.
They are going to stay there, they are going to fester. Maybe they become of a size which you can't manage on a later date.
Yes. Yes.
And it is best, I always say that unless you know your weaknesses, you can't work on them to convert them to strengths. So the first question which comes, is you ask your own people. The first basic question to ask your people is, are we the best in the industry?
Yep.
The answer will come no. Then you ask the second question, are we capable of becoming the best? The answer would come in yes.
Right.
And then the question comes is, what is it stopping us from becoming the best? So you are, converging into a critical area where you are bringing a point. And what will the people say when you ask this question, that what is it stopping us from becoming the best? Most of the times the answer will be, we need motivated, self-propelled people.
Yep.
They will say, we have the money, but we should take, people should take the lead.
Yeah.
We want people who are taking the lead and not taking instructions to do things what we tell them.
Yeah.
So they are looking at people engaged from within. Okay. Nobody likes to do too much of supervision of people. Right. If you are going to supervise all the time, then you are just ox in the bullock cart.
Correct, and I think...
Okay. And this is not what we are looking at. We are looking at people who are driving.
Yep.
Normally, I always say that, in a locomotive, there is one engine, and there are many more of these, bogies. But you want more engines to work on.
Exactly, and you want all of them to be aligned.
That's right.
In one direction. And as a result of this, as all of us can see, when you recently concluded your survey program, you got a near 100% response rate, which is absolutely fantastic and something we all yearn for. Now, I think the point that we all want to understand, Mr. Cooper, is coming to your point on fear, there's some very practical results that can come up from a survey program. And we've obviously, along with you, taken some of them as possibilities that colleagues of ours can work and prepare for. So how do you prepare for something like this where the possibility of the team being highly engaged is there but not necessarily enabled to deliver performance?
See, very simple that, if you come to know that, they are engaged, then there is something else lacking.
Yeah.
Okay? What is that lacking? Maybe they are not empowered. Maybe they don't have the tools and tackles to do their job.
Right.
Very simple. It's just only a very small element you got to do. Motivating people and keeping them, that is a high cost side.
Yeah.
But when providing tools and tackles is concerned, it is a very low cost.
Low cost, but also ongoing.
Ongoing, and that is what business requires for that.
Right. How about the next one, which is again a paradox that we see often in our experience, which is the possibility, and like you also mentioned, employees are very proud and advocate for the organization, yet at the same time they're actively looking out for other jobs. How do you manage this dilemma?
This also is not too big an issue. Here it comes straight away from there is something going wrong. Okay.
Yes.
The challenges are not there enough in this company. That would be meaning. It would mean that why are people looking for opportunity outside? Not most of the times people don't look for remuneration as one of the important things for change, need for change. People get frustrated because either they are not heard, they don't have enough challenges, they don't have they don't have a say in the management. They feel that I am just doing a job which is a very routine, mundane job, and I need some development. Company is not paying any interest, attention to my training needs. I've been telling so and so that I want to go for X training, but my boss is not sending me, and he's not letting my voice go up. So these are the things we have to struggle, and when you come by these surveys, all these points come up in some way or the other, and it becomes easier for the management to address.
Right, and I think what's good is also when the team and us prepare for this proactively. Yeah, it's helping us to ensure that when the presentations are made, we have a better way of managing people's expectations and have a clear way to move forward. Yeah. Another one that comes up, and this is very, very prevalent, Mr. Cooper, which is a lot of employees believe that their supervisors are not capable or able leaders. Something which is pretty unsettling maybe, but how do you deal with this?
See, again, this is a reality. If people feel that way, that means, you got to invest time in their supervisors. Yeah. So where is it we are lacking? Because when these type of surveys results come in, you get a very overall picture. Okay, unless you drill down to departments, otherwise you can't train each and every supervisor. Otherwise you will be investing time and money in wasteful resource. Spending it in the wrong area. So this helps us when we do a segment-wise review. When we get into drill down, we come to know that where the trouble areas are, and then you start working on those areas without telling the people, that they are the bad people, the supervisors. See, ultimately, that fellow is also doing a good job.
Exactly.
For whatever reason, maybe his style is not aligned to the today's times. Maybe he is an old person, or maybe he is a youngster who has been just promoted, and he starts whipping around. A little bit of small changes, a little bit of counseling people, calling them, discussing with them. I think this sets the tone right.
Very simple, easy to do, and also I would say very genuine approaches you're sharing with us over here in terms of how managers can be more enabled to lead their team. Another thing that we look at often, and this is more true of sales-driven organizations, Mr. Cooper, is sales team again are highly engaged, but they need the requisite firearm, as you put it, to ensure that they become enabled.
It's very simple, Kartik. Similar thing again, enabling people. Sometimes people look up to their bosses to help them in the field. Maybe they want some decisions, faster decisions. Sometimes they want small things which they really don't matter, but they become irritants, and that leads to demotivated team. Despite these things will happen in any organization, you can't eliminate them. There will be always a scarcity of resources. You are not having, never play in abundance. And when you are in a competitive environment, you have to just balance it. Just prioritize your needs of the business needs, give the right inputs, and give them a motivation. Basically, a sales team, what does it require? It requires empathy.
Yep.
Okay, it requires more to do with understanding where they need support. Much before they ask, you should be ready to understand that this is where they need support.
Yeah.
So if you are they ask for it and then you give it is no good.
That's more
the management should be aware that this is what they will need in the next 1 or 2 months. You should prepare them for that.
And this is interesting. So there's a quote that I would like to borrow from the internet, which says mid-managers are the new senior leaders, and that's because they are the only ones who have the distinction of knowing the views of the senior leadership as well as what is going on in the front lines. And a lot of times there's a big disconnect in companies at the mid-management level where they believe senior leadership is not in sync with what's happening on the ground. A very bitter pill to swallow, Mr. Cooper. How do you prepare for this eventuality?
I think it's all about communication. In today's times, if you find you have a certain finding, how you take it to your people is very important.
Right.
If you're going to tell somebody that you are not doing a good job, probably you are pushing him into a much more of a cocoon. He will shield himself from that sort of a thing. Now, it is a process. It takes time to align people, to bring them to understand that we are not aligned with the times or we are not aligned with the market needs. And it's a question of discussion, deliberation. People have very strong views. You will have in your team people having very strong views. People who are submissive, people will say, agree to whatever you say, but at the end of it, they go out and they will say, no, I don't align with it, and he is just giving me a lecture on this.
Right.
So you have to balance it out in a very matured manner that the person on the other end becomes receptive to the thought process. The person understands that we are not doing the things the right way, and there is a need for change. And once you know there is a need for change, people will change. And people have changed. I have seen the toughest of nuts to crack. But they need logic, they need a guidance, and they need some bit of hand-holding over a period of time. And from time to time, given feedback, how they are improving.
Right.
Okay. The positives have to follow once they start improving on.
Right, and I think change transposes itself to conclusion as well. And again, what you have shared over here are 3 very simple points where communication, just as we saw in the beginning, is something you use to create a momentum effect, but you also then have to sustain it. Hopefully, the engagement survey should also lead to some very clear focus areas. And the third, of course, is to have a very strong governance to ensure that you are actioning on the right problems and you're being able to report on the progress. So, again, would love to hear from you. What kind of communication is important post the survey from your point of view?
Post the survey, I think I can cover a few of your slides going forward.
Yep.
When we're taking once the survey is done, okay, you take the survey results to the people. Very, very broadly classified. You take them to the people, discuss the findings with them. Recheck. That is one most important point, to recheck as to what people wrote is what they meant. Sometimes people will write something and mean something. Sometimes it's a question of language. Then you get misled. So recheck with them that this is what we wanted to ask. Is this what you meant? Once that is confirmed, seek from people how would they like to go to address the issue. Don't give your own solutions. In small gatherings, when we did this survey, after that we gathered people in small lots and we took them through the survey results. We asked them, what is it you want us to change?
Sure.
And then we asked also them that how do you want this to change? So it is for them, it is by them.
Right.
So once they give in, there is a much more of involvement. And once people say, then the responsibility is on the shoulders of the management to work on them and deliver. And from time to time and again, over a period of time, reinforce them that this particular action has been done, this particular action is pending.
Right.
Even bring out those ones which are pending.
Right.
Otherwise, what people will say, this has been brushed under the carpet.
Right.
So keep it alive, keep the issue alive, and tell people, okay, this will be addressed. And the most important point is, give it every action a timeline.
Yes.
It should not, nothing should remain which does not have a timeline. And it should have a definite, if it is getting extended, you can't complete it, seek for extension.
Right.
And keep communicating all the time that this is what needs to be done, and this has been done so far, and this will be done in so and so period of time.
Right.
And that brings in a lot of confidence. So next time when you do your survey, you will get probably 100% feedback of the correct feedback you will get.
Right. In I think the next couple of minutes that we have left, what I'd like to do is just restate what I heard you say on action planning, which is make it authentic by first listening to what people want rather than have your own agenda item. Second is make sure that they are very clear and smart. And third is that by way of having a timeline, you're able to track and govern people to hold them accountable, since they were action plans they only created in the beginning themselves. We've also got some follow-up questions, Mr. Cooper, which I'd love to also take your inputs on, and I think some of them are very fundamental to any survey initiative. One is, how do you think of the frequency of an employee engagement survey for any company, let it be it a small organization, a multinational like yours, or anything in between?
I would say every alternate year should be okay.
Okay. And from your experience, can you also share with the team, from a survey design point of view, what were a couple of very specific questions that were very important from your point of view at Heidelberg, India?
From the questions viewpoint, are you asking?
Yes, correct.
As I mentioned very clearly, that I wanted the people to be honest, and people to not stay in between. Okay, they should give to any question an answer which is either tilting towards the left or to the right. So for me the most critical points were that when I'm looking at engagement of people, I want them to be clear what is it they need, what is they want. They should not give me a answer which is masked in a certain manner. I don't want masking to be here. I want clarity. I want people to express honestly, and first of all people should be clear what is it they want. Okay, not beating around the bush.
Right. And I think there were 2 points which we sort of left unattended, which I think you're bringing again and again. One is the question of neutrality, and the other is the question of people giving you the answer you probably want to hear and having to go deeper into it to make sure that you actually get the authentic answer. And I think, Mr. Cooper, from our experience as well, having almost 1 billion responses globally, of which India is a very large component, what we see culturally is that there's a higher level of agreement in India as compared to any other country globally where we've done survey initiatives. So I think, colleagues, from that point of view, I think what Mr. Cooper is saying is very right. It needs to be dovetailed further into. And I think on the question of neutrality, the simple way to look at answers where people rate things as neutral is almost just as disadvantageous to them saying they disagree. That's the way we would also recommend all of you look at your statement.
In fact, if somebody is neutral, I would take it, I normally try to push it to the disagreement side.
Exactly. Absolutely.
I prefer to push it there.
Right. Mr. Cooper, I can't thank you enough on behalf of InspireOne, on behalf of People Matters, but most importantly on behalf of all our dear colleagues who've attended this webinar. Colleagues, I'd like to sincerely thank you as well for taking the time out on a very busy Thursday, as I'm sure it is. If in case we've still left out any question, as I'm sure we have, one, my apologies. Second, please feel free to reach out to us in the email listed above. And the following follow-ups also are very much a possibility should you be interested.
In case if any questions are there, please send it to me. I'll be happy to answer them.
That's right. And to conclude, Mr. Cooper, your points remind me of 2 very strong books. One is a book by a professor called J.C. LaRoche at INSEAD, who created a book called Momentum Effect. And I cannot help but think how you create a momentum effect for any strategic initiative, including a survey, helps the organization really to propel performance going forward. And the other book which I got reminded of was a book by Ben Horowitz, who authored a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, where one of the things he talks about is sometimes to address things is just to make them very clear. You don't have to always answer them as yes and buy into what people want. Sometimes all that people need is just clarity that this is the organization's direction. And I think surveys are a great way to do that, as you rightly said. So with that, colleagues, thank you very, very much for your time, your patience, and your involvement. And we all look forward to hearing from you in the coming days.